I would like to go over basic HTML form concepts because it is very important that you understand how forms work in order to work with them using PHP. Now, I am working with a simple HTML file. Even though I do have it stored with my other files in htdocs, I am running it as a file in the browser. I am not running it over localhost. Forms were initially designed to accept input from the user and to process that input using a CGI script on the server. Now we have technologies such as PHP. When JavaScript emerged, we then had the ability to use the form elements to develop client-sided applications. So I would like to go over the server side of HTML forms. So here we have some typical form elements. There are many more, and 10 new form elements have been added with HTML5. So here we have a password box. A password box is essentially a text box. However, you cannot see the information. There is actually a hidden field here, and it is coded. You can't see it. However, you can use it to pass data. Here we have a text box, and by the way, these are HTML5 placeholders. Here we have a text box, another text box, another text box, a drop-down list. There are several different ways of configuring a drop-down list. This is a traditional drop-down list where you can only select one. We have a radio group. Radio buttons are mutually exclusive, meaning you can only check one at a time. And we have a series of checkboxes. Checkboxes can all be checked and unchecked. The terminology for making a mark in a checkbox or a radio is checked. For making a choice in a drop-down list is a selected. These are also properties. This is a text area box where we can add comments. We have two buttons. This is going to send the data, and this one will clear the data. So let's take a look at the HTML. Here I have my opening form tag. The action of the form. This is the path and or name of the script that will process this. This will eventually be a PHP script. However, at this point, I am just inserting a hash mark, and technically the form is going to post to itself. There are two methods how the data is sent. Method equals get means it is sent as a query string in the address bar. Method equals post means it is sent in the body of the message and you can't see it. The dynamics of sending them both are the same, except that a get is visible, a post is not visible. Therefore, by the way, a method equals get is the default also. Generally use a post because you don't want anyone to see the data. Because we can see the data, I'm going to show you how we work with data. Okay, technically, every form element should be associated with a label. The for attribute should match the ID attribute. So here I have input type equals password. The input element is used to create about 15 or 16 different form elements. They vary by changing the value of type. However, technically they're still text boxes, meaning they have the same properties. All right, ID is for CSS, JavaScript, and accessibility. Therefore, ID values must always be unique. Okay, I said it's for accessibility. The value of ID has to match the value of for. This for is purely for accessibility. It is making a connection between this word password and the form element. We understand when we look at it that you are asking me to put my password in here because we have eyes and we can read it. Screen readers don't see, they interpret code. And that is the purpose of the label element. Okay, the name, HTML attribute. This is the value that we use to identify this for the server. So what happens when we hit the button, that magical submit button, it sends the name value pairs to the server. It calls the action of the form, and the name value pairs are sent. So this is the name, and the value is what the user puts in there. Now, you will commonly see name and ID having the same values because they are both technically unique, with a few exceptions. These exceptions are a checkbox and a radio. All right, so here's my type equals hidden. I can't see it. Name equals hide. Here's a text box. And by the way, the default value for type is text. So if you don't type it in, you get a text box. All right, here's my last name text box. There's my email text box. The drop-down list does not use the input tag. It uses an opening and closing select. The name is set for the select. Every choice is enclosed inside an option element. What the user sees is between the opening and closing option. The value is coded in for every option element. The first value is selected by default. Text boxes and anything that technically is a text box, such as password, by default holds nothing. Nothing is something. It is not null, so therefore it sends back an empty string by default. Checkboxes and radios do not send back anything unless they are checked. Therefore, by default, they are null. Okay, type equals radio. Name equals gender. Type equals radio. Name equals gender. Radio buttons have to have the same value for the name attribute. This is the exception to the uniqueness. Here again, IDs are always unique. When it comes to radios and checks, you have to code in a value. Technically, if you don't, it will return on, the string on. It's more professional to code in a value. They have to have the same name because that makes them mutually exclusive. Okay, checkboxes, type equals checkboxes. They may have unique names, as I have here. They may share the same name. If they share the same name, they will be sent individually to the server with multiple name value pairs using the same name. However, on the other side, you need to have a loop to loop through them and store their individual values in an array. So by using unique names for checkboxes, it kind of makes life a little easier. This is our text area. That's that big box down there. Here again, because this acts like a text box, it accepts user input. The value is what the user enters. Here is my name. Input, type equals submit. This is a button. Type equals submit is a very magical button. It calls the action of the form, and the name value pairs are sent to the value of the action. Type equals reset will set the form elements to their initial values. You can have things checked by default. Type equals button is used for JavaScript. All right, so let's take a look at this. If I were to click send data with nothing being entered, take a look at my address bar. Notice this question mark. That is the beginning of my query string. Pass equals nothing. Remember, it's going to send back an empty string. Ampersand. The ampersand is used to join the name value pairs. Hide equals nothing. That is the hidden field. It is sending back an empty string. Ampersand. F name equals nothing. L name equals nothing. Email equals nothing. City equals none. All right. Comments equal nothing. All right. Hash. That hash sign is my action. All right. Notice city equals none. That was my first choice. By default, you will receive values for empty text boxes. And your PHP form needs to know this because it needs to determine, am I going to echo back a field that the user didn't enter anything, or do I only want the fields that have something in them? You would do this with an if statement. By default, drop-downs, the first choice is selected, and here it is. As I said, we will not see anything on our radios and checks unless we check them. So if I were to type in a password, I'll just do XYZ, and I'll put my first name in here, and I'll put my last name in here, and I will select the city, Escondido. There we go. All right, let's take a look at what we have up here. All right, password equals XYZ. Okay, there is nothing for the hidden field. F name equals Teresa. L name equals Pelkie. I did not put anything in for the email. I did choose Escondido. There's my gender. We didn't see that before. And what I do is I put a cursor here, and I hit the end to go to the back. All right. Tofu equals on. I guess I forgot to put a value in there. And take a look at the way the comments come out. This is your character encoding. It translates those characters into an ASCII format. Spaces are represented by a plus sign. So in order to work with forms on a web server, you need to understand how the data is being sent in the beginning, or your PHP scripts will never work.